Hello students, I am Sam sir, and today we are going to see the third chapter of your geography textbook, and that is known as water resources. This is the first part of two parts that we will be studying this chapter in. In this part, we will be studying these two topics only. One is the availability of water on earth, and second is what is water scarcity, what it means, and what are the reasons. Now, as for the availability of water on Earth, we know that 96.5% of water on uh, Earth is in the oceans by volume, and by area, 71% is the oceans. Now, about 3% water, or 2.5% to be exact, is the fresh water. Whenever we say fresh water in geography, we mean water which is not salty, like the water of the oceans. So fresh water is water with no salt in it. No, it's not salty. Now, out of that 3% water, or 2.5% as your textbook says. Now, out of this 70%, about 70% is in the ice caps and the glaciers. 30.1% is groundwater. So it's a division between 70% and 30%. Now, if you take 30% of 3%, it is 0.9%. So it's actually the water that we get to use for our daily uses, and for manufacturing, and for agriculture, and for industries, and all this what is, we are actually looking at this 0.9% only. Now, roughly 3/4 of the surface of Earth is covered with water. And then why do we say that there's scarcity of water? We just don't say it, we mean it, because we experience all that. And by the coming year, like in the coming years, this crisis will only become worse. And today, 600 million people, that is 60 crore people in India, are facing extreme stress about water. This is a scene from Maharashtra, and even in news and in the newspaper, such cracked earth is often shown to represent a place where there is no water. We also associate, whenever we say water scarcity, we associate that with images of drought prone areas or areas with low rainfall. We visualize Rajasthan, and we visualize people going long distances to fetch water. Now, water scarcity is defined as lack of sufficient fresh water resources to meet the demand for water within a region. It affects people living in places where sufficient water is not available, or the available water is not of good quality. Just please note this, that we are talking about two things. In this first part, we said about the quantity, sufficient water not being available. And the second one is water is available in plenty, but that is not of good quality. So we're talking about quantity and quality both. And it leads to social, environmental, and economical problems. And it can have both natural causes as well as man-made causes. Natural causes can be because of drought, for example. Now, the sources of fresh water are these three. When we say precipitation, we are talking of any kind of water, whether it is in solid form as in hail, it can be liquid form as in raindrop, or it can be even gaseous form as in the case of water vapor. Any of these three are known as precipitation. If they are falling towards the ground, if they are coming toward the ground, that is precipitation. And we'll see what is surface runoff and groundwater in a while. See this, since you were little children, you've been drawing water cycle. On one hand, we have the evaporation, and along with evaporation is another biological phenomena. It's known as transpiration from the plants, and then the vapors condense and they fall to the ground, and that is known as precipitation. After that, see, I told you about transpiration. Evaporation and transpiration happen together, and they happen in a fixed proportion. And the transpiration is directly proportional to the plant cover, or the vegetation cover. Now, whatever water falls to the ground, it enters the soil, and that is known as infiltration. And if it is flowing below the surface of the land, it is known as underground flow, and that provides soil with soil moisture. Now, some water flows on the surface of earth, that is known as surface runoff, and together they contribute to the stream flow. Now, when we're talking about underground water, we said that water after precipitation enters the soil through in process of infiltration, and it percolates downwards because of gravity, and it contributes to the water table. And there's a flow below the surface, that is known as groundwater flow, and the surface flow is known as surface runoff, and together they contribute to our water bodies. Surface runoff is the water from rain, snowmelt, or other sources that flow over the surface of land due to gravity, and it is a major component of water cycle, and it influences human life. The water which is below the ground is known as groundwater. This picture may look beautiful, but when you actually want to use water, you won't be preferring surface water. Surface water is the water which is there on the surface of earth, and the easiest way to understand this is, if you are able to see the surface of the water, then it is surface water. Like oceans, like lakes, this water is usually not pure because of the dead and decaying plant and animal bodies in it. It can have microbacteria, microorganisms. It can also have so many impurities, man-made or natural. So this is not preferred for drinking. Now there's a question we need to all understand and answer. It is said that nearly 2 billion people will live in absolute water scarcity by the year 2025. We are talking globally. Today the global population is about 7 billion, and by 2025 it will grow. So we are looking at more than 20%, at least more than 20% of the people will be living in absolute water scarcity just 5 years from now. What could be the reason behind that? Because we have a growing population, we have more mouths to feed, we need water for agriculture. Let's see what we do with our water. Let us see the Indian perspective. Now, you know that India is the 7th largest country by area in the world, and we rank the second by population. And in a couple of years, we may even leave China behind in population, and will become number one. But of the entire global precipitation, we get only 4%. So we have a big landmass and we get only 4%. So how are we going to manage? And we have a big population that needs water every day, several times a day. There are 195 countries in the world, and we rank 133rd in terms of water availability per person per annum. That means per year. It means that there are 132 countries which are better off than us. So what makes them better off than us? Is it just because we are more in population? Our total renewable water resources are approximately 1,897 square kilometer per year. Now, you know that water is a renewable resource because of the water cycle. In water cycle, what happens is evaporation takes place, transpiration takes place. So only water is evaporating and only water is getting transpired, because the impurities will not get evaporated. the solid things or the microorganisms or the other things which are there in water will not get evaporated. And what vapor has gone above, that only will condense and come down as precipitate, and that is the reason we say that water is a renewable resource. Now, of the entire land area we do agriculture on 42% of our land, and our government wants the forest cover to increase by one third, that is 33% of the land area, but we have forest cover only on 22% of the land area. If you look at another country, Israel, it's hardly as large as the state of Kerala, and the population density is 400 people per square kilometer. In India, it is 384 people per square kilometer. They have the land under agriculture as 20% of their area. They don't have Himalayas. They don't have uh, uh, perennial rivers flowing from melting glaciers. They have a hot weather. It's a desert climate. Still, they produce a lot of agricultural produce, and their GDP is 3.5% comes from the agricultural export. They don't have water shortage. So we just cannot blame population for every woe that we may have. It is also because of bad management. And when we say bad management, we are talking about the bad management of water resources. So what do we do with our water? We do over exploitation. We use water excessively. When we say over exploitation, we are just not careful about uh, using our resource. We are not doing it in a sustainable manner. When we say excessive use, it means that if you could do with 10 liters, you are using more water than that, maybe 12 liters, 11 liters, 15 liters, 20 liters, who knows. If you wash your car with a hose, you end up wasting more water, but if you have one bucket of 20 liters, that is sufficient. That is excessive use of water. We have unequal access to water among different social groups. Some people living in cities or in the posh areas of the cities, they don't have water shortage. They have adequate water supply. Others, they don't. They are not so lucky. So, where is water scarcity likely to occur? Let's see this. And the reason for scarcity of water. Now we have a large and growing population, and it leads to greater demand for water. See, when we say the basic needs of a human being is food, clothing, and shelter. If you make a shelter, if you make a house, it will last you for 50 years. If you buy a dress or stitch a dress for yourself, it will last you at least 3 years, 2 years. But we cannot do without food and water. We need it constantly, maybe twice, thrice a day. Water, maybe more than that. So there's a greater demand for water. When the population is more, the demand for water is more. But the supply remains either that much or it's reducing. So there's a conflict between demand and supply. So direct demand is for the domestic use. We want it for washing, we want it for drinking, we want it for cooking. And then for industrial use, wherever the production is involved, if it is to go as a raw ingredient or in the process, and for agriculture, then there is indirect demand for industries as mostly, also for the domestic use. The indirect demand is for power generation. The houses need electricity, the industries also need electricity. Agriculture also needs electricity to some extent. And for applications other than where water is used in process or as a raw material, if if the water is fitting in this definition, it is indirect demand for power for water. To produce more food, we need more water. The irrigated land area has increased for dry season agriculture. Now be careful while understanding it. Dry season agriculture means agriculture which is done in seasons apart from the monsoon seasons or apart from any season in which precipitation occurs. So you're creating an artificial environment and doing agriculture there because the demand for food grain is more. So we have found out alternatives to the traditional agriculture. Now this irrigated agriculture is one of the largest consumer of water. Also because we have poor irrigation techniques, we just go on the traditional techniques, and to that we have added the sprinkler system. Whether or not that water is actually being used by the plant or by the crops, we are not bothered. We just want the sprinkler to run for so many hours. Then the possible solutions for this is to develop drought resistant crops. There are crops which they require less water as compared to this. So but this will, if we were to do this, then we will have to change our food habits also. For example, maize requires less water than groundnuts, or maize require less crops than less water than wheat. So instead of using wheat chapatis, you have to eat chapatis made up of maize. That is the thing what I said, that I have to make changes in our lifestyle. And then if we are doing dry farming anyways, then we should develop the proper techniques for that. Then we need improvement in the methods of irrigation and agriculture. So this could be a question for you in examination. What do you mean by water scarcity? So that is the definition, and some explanation is required. Then what causes water scarcity? And when it comes to agriculture, what could be the solutions? Now the groundwater level is falling. The reason is more dug wells are there and more tube wells are there. Now if you want to get water in your tube well, you have to dig several hundred feet. The reason is the groundwater level has fallen. In residential buildings, in societies also, they are using pumps to draw water from the ground. It's used in the agricultural field also, in industries also. Neither of this 1, 2, and 3 can do without water. In industries, first of all, there is direct consumption. This is in the manufacturing, the process, and in the service. When we say in service, let us say that you want your car to be washed, or an aircraft needs to be washed. So that's in the service. And there is indirect consumption, that is in power requirement. Now about power requirement, you understand this. See, there's the power generated by the flow of water, that is known as hydroelectricity. It is known as hydel power. This contributes to 22% of the total electric power generated in India. The other 78% comes from thermal power plants or nuclear power plants. We only have 6 nuclear power plants in India. Now, in thermal power plants, water is converted into steam, and with steam, turbines are rotated and they produce electricity for us. In nuclear power plants, something similar is done. There's a nuclear reaction going on, and for cooling down the reactor, they circulate water, but they do not reuse that water. In the case of thermal power plants, one cannot reuse that water because it's converted into steam. So electricity production involves lot of water. Urbanization means growing of cities. So when that happens, we need water for the domestic use, and most societies have their own groundwater pumping devices, as you know, probably you also have it. This means the water resources is being overexploited. Urban areas also need electricity, and there is no alternative to either water or electricity. The average person is careless in using both. We feel that I'm going to pay for my electricity bill, and I'm paying for for it and for the water supply. So who the hell is anybody to tell me to be careful about water and electricity? And we are more careless about electricity because we feel that if there's a water tap flowing, it's our duty to go and close the tap because for parenting, for example. But when there's a fan running in a room, we don't feel that the need to switch it off. Bear in mind that if you are wasting electricity, you are wasting water indirectly, and this results in water scarcity. Till now, we were talking about only quantitative scarcity of water, but there is also qualitative scarcity of water. That is, the water sometimes is so bad, it's not good for human consumption. Now, just imagine that if this boy were you, if you were in place of this boy, would you be drinking water from such a source? This is definitely not tea, although the color is like tea. No. If not, why not? Then why is this boy forced to drink water like this? There are places where water is sufficiently available to meet the needs of all the people, but the area still suffers from water scarcity. This is because of the bad quality of water. You know that the Indian Peninsula is surrounded by oceans on three sides. We have the Bay of Bengal, we have the Indian Ocean, and we have the Arabian Sea. But do you think we can use that water for drinking? No, it's not possible because of the saltiness of the water. Similarly, in inland water also, sometimes the water quality is so bad, you have it but you cannot use it. So what do we do about that? Now, let us see what is the contribution of agriculture in that, and also industries and the domestic supply. We use far too much fertilizer than is actually needed. According to a survey by the National Geographic Society, India uses 51% more fertilizer, and I'm talking about chemical fertilizer, than is needed. This is because of the lack of awareness among farmers. We feel that we give more food to our children and our children become healthy, but this is not true thinking for plants and crops. The extra that you put dissolves in the water because the plants can take up only soluble minerals, you know that, and because they dissolve in water, they infiltrate into the soil and end up in water bodies. Then what do we do about pesticides? The approach is similar. We spray pesticides at random on everything. There are chalks available. You draw a line on the floor, and if a cockroach or an ant crosses it, it dies through taking up from its body, not even consuming it. So, if such a poisonous pesticide is doing that, and we carelessly spray so much of pesticide indiscriminately, and when we switch on the sprinkler, both the fertilizer and the pesticide and the herbicide, they all get into the soil and finally they end up in our water bodies. So we are playing with poisons. So let's see what we do with our domestic sewage. Our domestic waste, the waste from our toilets, are discharged in water. Most of the time it's not treated and we just throw it like that. Our industries think it is somehow their right to discharge the waste directly in water bodies. The need of the hour is to conserve and manage water resources, to safeguard ourselves from health hazard, to ensure food security, and to continue our livelihood and productivity activities and prevent degradation of our natural ecosystem. This is the end of part 1. I'm not a YouTuber, I'm your class teacher. I'm your teacher, subject teacher. And if you feel that you have benefited from this video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't, it hardly matters because the purpose is to provide knowledge, not to get a thumbs up. And do subscribe to the channel. And wait for the second part. It will the following shortly.